Hey guys, welcome back to another slow descent into historical misery. Tonight, we're going somewhere especially grim. A time of plagues, pottage, punishments, and permanent back pain. We're diving into what life was actually like in the Middle Ages. Not the castles and courtly love stuff. The real medieval experience. And trust me, you wouldn't survive a single day. Before you time travel into suffering, go ahead and like the video, subscribe if this kind of dark lullaby does it for you, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and how many hours of sleep you wish you were getting. Misery loves sleepy company. Now dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft medieval wind effect, and let's begin. You've arrived in 1325. That was your first mistake. You wake up. That's your first real problem. Because the year is 1325, and nothing good ever starts with you wake up in a medieval village. Your eyes open, crusted with sleep and smoke residue. The air smells like boiled onion, sweat, damp wood, and something faintly fungal. It's a scent you've stopped questioning. You breathe through your mouth now. Not because you want to, because your nose has surrendered. You're lying on something soft, but not in the way a bed is soft. This softness has resistance. It crunches. It shifts. It's straw. If you move too fast, it scratches. If you lie too long, it moulds to your shape like it's trying to claim you. This is your mattress. Or was. It's technically communal, made from flattened hay, wool tufts, and probably mouse droppings, all piled into what used to be a sack, but is now a general idea of one. It smells like the inside of a barn. Probably because it was the inside of a barn, 3 owners ago. Your blanket is one heavy square of rough wool that doubles as a coat, tablecloth, and, on rare occasions, a towel. It has absorbed more history than parchment. You suspect it's never been washed, only scraped. It weighs roughly as much as a full-grown dog. A wet one. The fire has long since died. It's still dark, but the kind of dark that hints morning is near. That liminal, aching kind of cold that seeps through walls, bones and memory. Your breath fogs. The moisture freezes in your nose. The last spark of warmth in the hearth offers no sympathy. You're 22, which means you're middle-aged, statistically speaking. Your spine agrees. You sit up and immediately hear a crack. It could be your back. It could be the straw. You don't have time to find out. The bell is about to ring. The bell. Every day begins the same way, with the village church bell reeking into the sky like a metal banshee. No clocks, no alarms, just a disembodied voice from a tower telling you it's time to work, time to pray, time to obey. And today is no different. You're not alone in this single-room hut, not even close. Next to you is your older brother, snoring in a way that sounds legally concerning. Near the door, not that it latches, are your parents, both wrapped in equally heavy wool, radiating the kind of fatigue only medieval parenthood can cause. At your feet, curled into a shape that defies natural biology, is your youngest sibling. Age? Maybe 6, maybe 9. No one wrote it down. Birthdays are celebrated only when someone miraculously lives long enough to remember one. A chicken is under the stool. Another is on the stool. One of them might be dead. In the corner is your aunt, possibly. She moved in last summer after something happened in the next village. No one asked details. She doesn't speak much, but she knits with terrifying speed and watches everyone like she knows their secrets. And then there's the pig. It isn't yours. Technically, nothing is yours. Ownership is more of a gentle understanding here. The pig lives in the room, sleeps near the hearth, occasionally steps on your foot while chewing something it found in the compost pile. It's not rude, it's just a pig. You swing your legs over the edge of the straw and place your bare feet onto the ground. The floor is dirt, but not clean dirt. This dirt has lived. It's seen things. There are patches of crust from old spills, one suspiciously warm, damp spot, and something green growing near the wall. That wall leaks when it rains, and it rains a lot. Shoes? Optional. You might have them. They might fit. One of them definitely has a hole. Leather? Worn, smooth, barely stitched. They offer as much protection as a slightly damp potato. Your clothes? You're already wearing them. You've never taken them off, not really. A single tunic. Wool. Scratchy. Smells like you. A scent you now recognise as home. Underwear? A luxury. Maybe a linen scrap if you're lucky. If not, congratulations. You're one with the wind. You haven't even left your house yet. But you've already made contact with 3 types of animal hair, 2 species of lice, and 1 existential crisis. You stretch, slowly, gently, like someone testing to see which parts still move and which ones scream. Your left shoulder cracks, not in a satisfying way, more like a medieval warning signal. Your lower back joins in with a dull ache that feels centuries old. You were born sore. You will die sore. That's the arrangement. The tunic rubs your skin the wrong way. That's not a metaphor. It's literal. The wool is coarse, stitched by someone who had access to needles, but not necessarily sewing knowledge. It itches in all the places you can't reach, and chafes in the places you can. You've scratched yourself so often and so absent-mindedly that you now have a permanent raw spot behind your knee. You've named it? Probably something like the patch. You look around the room again. It's still dark, but the firelight has surrendered entirely. The smoke hole above the hearth lets in a faint draught, but nothing else. There are no windows. There is no glass. Glass exists, but not for you. Glass is for churches, rich people, things that matter. You matter only in that your body creates labour, and consumes food, sometimes. There are no paintings on the walls, no decorations. Just a crucifix made of wood, slightly crooked, hanging above the lintel. A constant reminder that your suffering is part of a plan. A divine one, apparently. The air is thick. Not with smoke anymore, but with bodies. With decades of unwashed fabric and breath and boiled roots. It's not even unpleasant anymore. It's just the air. You live in it like a fish lives in water. A very unfortunate, landlocked, flea-bitten fish. Outside you can hear footsteps in the mud. Your neighbour probably. The one who doesn't blink. She's already up. She's always up. No one has ever seen her sleep, and some suspect she might not. Her name is something like Maud or Edwig or God's punishment. No one really knows. You sigh. It's a defeated kind of sigh. The kind that doesn't ask for help or pity. Just air. Just one more breath before the next part of the day begins. You stand up. Both knees crack. One ankle doesn't. That's the scary one. You're hungry. You've been hungry for the past 10 years. Hunger is not a feeling anymore. It's a background state like gravity or dread. The last meal was last night. A ladle of pottage, which isn't so much a dish as it is a concept. A bowl of everything you couldn't identify, reheated for the 5th day in a row. Texture, wet, temperature, questionable. Flavour, varies. Sometimes it tastes like turnip, sometimes like sadness, sometimes like mouse. You're not sure when it started. No one remembers the original ingredients. The pot is rarely emptied, just topped off. It's less a recipe and more a long-term edible arrangement. A medieval sourdough starter, but cursed. You squint through the gaps in the wood at the edge of the hut. No sun yet? Just the kind of pre-dawn darkness that makes you question the concept of time. But you know what time it is. The same time it always is. Time to prepare. You take a step toward the door and stub your toe. On something. A bucket. A sibling. Doesn't matter. Pain flares through your foot like betrayal. You don't yell. There's no point. You just absorb the pain like a mossy sponge. Another day, another toe. You find the door. A plank of uneven wood barely attached to the wall with rusted nails and intention. It doesn't open so much as shift. There's no handle. Just a gap you wedge your fingers into and pull. The outside air hit you like a sermon. Cold, loud, and not entirely welcome. You step outside. The ground is mud. Always. Permafrost when it's cold. Slush when it's warm. No in between. Your foot sinks. The cold squeezes between your toes. There's a worm. You make eye contact. It judges you. There are no streets. Just paths. Dirt, pressed down by feet and hooves and wheels and weather. The smell hits you now. It's always there, but stronger in the morning. It's the scent of waste. Human, animal, philosophical. Chamber pots dumped in ditches. Horses doing what horses do mid-step. Chickens not caring. Pigs making contributions. You're surrounded by it, and yet this is home. The village is maybe 20 huts, a church, a shed that stores grain and rats, a muddy field. Everything else is forest or road, or the looming knowledge that somewhere, someone with a sword might decide this place looks burnable. You don't think in grand terms. Not of kingdoms, not of countries. You're not sure what country you're in, exactly. It's been called different things by different soldiers. You don't keep track. Your world is this village, these fields, that one angry goat that always escapes. You know the Lord's name, barely. He doesn't live here. He owns here. Big difference. His manor is 2 days' walk. You've never seen it. He sends a man twice a year to collect things. Food, mostly. Chickens, if you have them. Wool, if you've spun any. Children. If he's feeling imperial, there's no school, no books. You've never seen a written word. Words are for monks, for God. You speak what your parents spoke. A version of English twisted by time, accent, and necessity. You know how to curse. You know how to plead. That's enough. You stretch again. That same shoulder protests. The cold is in your bones now. You can't name them, but you feel them all. Someone coughs behind you. Wet. Hollow. Tubercular. Another sound you've grown used to. The village is always coughing. Always limping. Always surviving. If that's the right word. You head back inside. There's no breakfast yet. There won't be until someone starts a fire. You're not sure if it's your turn. Doesn't matter. You'll do it anyway. Because that's life. You're a peasant. In 1325. And somehow, it still hasn't hit you how bad today's going to be. You crouch by the hearth. The embers are dead. No glow, no heat. Just a pile of greyish ash pretending to be relevant. Starting a fire is never fast. The wood is damp. Everything is damp. Your fingers are stiff. The flint is dull. You strike anyway. It takes 4 tries. Then 8 more. Eventually, a spark. You breathe into the kindling like you're praying it into existence. For a brief moment, the dry grass catches. The warmth is immediate, the light faint. It flickers against the walls like it's trying to run away from you. Behind you, the hut stirs. Someone coughs. Someone else groans. The daily rebirth begins. Not from hope, just necessity. If you don't move, you don't eat. If you don't eat, you don't move. Simple math. Your mother is up next. Her face is lined with years of smoke and responsibility. She doesn't speak at first, just nods. You nod back. In this world, that's affection. That's I see you. That's enough. She adds a log to the fire. You get the pot? The pot, blackened, cracked, sacred. It never leaves the hearth. It is the hearth. Whatever goes into it becomes sustenance. Eventually. Today it's pottage again. It's always pottage. You scoop from a wooden bowl what was left from yesterday, maybe the day before. A sludge of grains, root vegetables, and possibly a bean. Maybe. There's something floating. You decide not to ask. Your younger sibling wakes up whining. That's their job. Whining, then sneezing, then falling asleep face down on the floor. Your older brother mutters something about wolves in his sleep. Your aunt is already knitting again. You haven't heard her speak in weeks. She might be a ghost. No one checks. Someone outside screams at a cow or a neighbour. Hard to tell? You eat slowly, carefully. The porridge is hot in places, cold in others. The texture is glue. The taste is neutral evil. You chew with effort. You always chew with effort. The bread is from 2 days ago. It can cut the roof of your mouth. You chew it anyway, because you're not eating for pleasure. You're eating for survival. And because you don't know when the next meal is. Your father enters. Barefoot. Coughing. He nods too. That's love again. He scratches behind his knee and stares into the fire, like it owes him something. You know that look? You'll have that look in 5 years? Maybe less. He asks about the tools. You lie. You say they're fine. They're not. The hoe handle is splitting. The blade is rusting. The rope snapped last week. But there's no metal to fix it, and no one with time to care. It's nearly dawn now. The fire crackles. The pottage simmers. The hot breathes as one. A chorus of low, shuffling life. Outside, the village starts to come alive. Though alive is generous. More like animated by force. You step outside again. You still haven't relieved yourself. That will come. Soon. And it will not be pleasant. But for now, you stand there, on the cold earth, watching the sky try to remember how to be light again. You take it all in. You are here. You are 22. You are a peasant. And you're already tired. You've never known comfort. Not really. You've heard rumours of soft things. Stories about roast meat and honey. About sheets that don't itch. About boots that fit. But you've never seen these things. You've only dreamed of them. And even your dreams are grey. Your name is common. Something like John, or Elric, or Tom. It doesn't matter. You are one of hundreds of Johns. Thousands. You're not meant to be remembered. That's not what this life is for. You don't write. You can't. You don't read. There is nothing to read. The only stories you know are passed from mouth to mouth, worn thin from repetition, like a stone smoothed by centuries of river. You don't wonder what could have been. You don't have time for existentialism. That's for monks and nobles. You wonder if today's bread will be softer, if the goat will stop escaping, if the leak in the roof can be patched before the next rain. You wonder if this winter will be survivable. You wonder if that cough your sister has is going to turn into something fatal again. You wonder why the priest looked at you so long last week, if he suspects you skipped mass, if he noticed the missing chicken, if he heard you mutter something under your breath about how unfair it all is. Because in this world, you can be punished for doubt. You can be punished for bad luck. You can be punished for existing in the wrong way at the wrong time, and no one will stop it. Because suffering is the default. Justice is rare. Mercy is expensive. Hope is dangerous. But you still rise. Because everyone else does. Because not rising is worse. Because maybe today you'll fix the roof. Or catch a rabbit. Or see the sun. Or just make it to bed without bleeding. You stretch one last time. The tunic pulls. The seams groan. A flea jumps from your wrist to your neck. It's going to be a long day, and it hasn't even started yet. Where you live, what you wear, what your nose is begging you to forget. You live in a box. Technically, it's called a house. In practice, it's an enclosed collection of wood, mud, and disappointment. One room, no windows, no privacy, no hope. It's built from timber and wattle, which sounds charming until you realise wattle is just sticks glued together with mud and wishful thinking. The roof is thatch, which means straw piled thick and rotting slowly, one wet season at a time. It leaks. Not always. Just whenever it rains or drizzles, or looks like it might consider drizzling. Inside, the walls are patchy and uneven. The draft comes from every direction. You've tried stuffing the gaps with hay, or wool, or your own despair. Nothing works. The cold gets in anyway. It doesn't knock. It just enters and makes itself at home. Your bed, as we've discussed, is a mattress only by title. A sad clump of straw that's shared between siblings, chickens and parasites. There's no frame, no pillow. Your neck is supported by the same hope that got you into this situation. If you're lucky, you sleep near the hearth. The warmth is marginal, but it's better than the far side of the room, where the wall has a mysterious dark patch. And once, you swear, you heard it whisper your name. The floor is dirt. Uneven, damp dirt. It shifts with the weather. Sometimes it hardens like rock. Sometimes it squishes like a compost bin. In the corners, something is always growing. Mysterious mushrooms. Or maybe it's mould. Or maybe it's just your house decomposing in slow motion. There is no ventilation. Smoke drifts up toward the roof beams and hovers there like an exhausted ghost. You breathe it in every day, every breath, a little more soot in your lungs. Your cough has become a personality trait, a rasping punctuation to your every sentence. There's no furniture really. A bench, if you're fancy. A stool that wobbles. A crate that doubles as storage and a table. A single shelf with 3 objects, a wooden bowl, a cracked cup, and a lump of something that might be soap, but no one's used it in years because it's now considered haunted. Your clothes hang on a peg. One outfit. A tunic, coarse and grey-brown from years of use, earth, and sweat. It started off wool. It's now part wool, part grime, and part folklore. You wear it every day. Washing clothes is a luxury you can't afford. Not just because of water, but because scrubbing them means not wearing them, and not wearing clothes is deeply frowned upon, even by chickens. You own a belt made of rope. A pouch that once held something useful, now full of lint and crumbs. You have a knife, short, dull, indispensable. You use it for everything. Cutting roots, splitting bread, scaring mice. You sharpen it on rocks. Not because it helps, but because it makes you feel like you're doing something. Your shoes are the suggestion of footwear. Leather, cracked and curling like old leaves. The soles have worn through. Mud seeps in every time you take a step. You still wear them, because what else is there? Socks? Huh? That's cute. Outside, the village is a maze of mud and noise. Chickens cluck. Pigs squeal. People shout at animals and occasionally at clouds. Everyone is damp, irritated and walking with a limp. You greet neighbours by grunting. No one smiles in the morning. They haven't smiled in decades. The street, if it can be called that, is a trench of muck and slush. A narrow path worn by feet and hooves. There are no stones, no gravel, just wet earth and the memory of drier times. Children play in the mud? By play we mean stand in it and hope not to fall. If they do, no one helps. It builds character. And possibly ringworm. The village well stands in the centre, surrounded by buckets and gossip. The water is brown on a good day, grey on most. You drink it anyway. Or you boil it. Or you just close your eyes and pretend it's ale. Most of the time it's safer to drink weak beer. At least beer has been boiled. Water? Water has plans. The houses line the road like tired teeth, each one leaning slightly like it's slowly giving up. Roofs sag, doors hang crooked. Windows, the rare ones, are just holes covered with oiled cloth or wooden shutters. Light gets in during the day. Cold gets in all the time. There's a church at the far end, the largest building in the village. Stone, grey, slightly cracked. It smells like candle wax and penance. The priest lives next to it. He watches everything. Always. You've never seen him blink. Near the church is a communal oven. A big, soot-black dome of stone. Families take turns baking bread there. You bring your own dough, and pray no one steals it, or sneezes on it, or claims it's theirs. Arguments happen. Sometimes fights. Once, a man lost an ear over a particularly round loaf. Next to that is a latrine pit. Communal. Flies orbit it like it's the sun. You don't go there unless you have to. You do your business quickly, breathe through your sleeve, and hope nothing splashes. And that's when things are working properly. Most days, you use a bucket behind your hut. You empty it into the ditch when it's full. That ditch runs past the houses and down into the stream. The same stream where you fetch water, and wash clothes, and occasionally rinse wounds. The smell? Unexplainable. A cocktail of sewage, ash, wet animals, rotting leaves, and despair. You try to ignore it. Your nose mostly has, but every so often, when the wind shifts, you gag involuntarily and wonder if you've finally smelled enough to qualify as a different species. Your skin is not your own. It belongs to the fleas now. They've moved in, not just onto you, but into the fabric of your tunic, the folds of your bedding, the creases behind your knees. You scratch constantly. You don't remember when it started. Probably birth. Everyone itches. It's not a condition, and it's a culture. You've tried everything. Ashes rubbed into the skin. Cold water, prayer, nothing works. You've accepted the scratching as part of your identity. You itch through meals, during chores, while talking to the priest. No one notices. because they're doing the same thing. You have lice too. Of course you do. Head lice, body lice, mystery lice that don't follow rules. You've plucked them off in moments of boredom, crushed them between fingernails, and once found one on your bread and shrugged. Protein. Bathing? That's not part of your routine. That's a decision. A complicated one. To bathe, you'd have to haul water from the stream. Heat it somehow. Pour it into a cracked wooden tub, borrowed from a neighbour who wants it back within the hour. Strip down, scrub with a rag, hope no one walks in, hope the water doesn't freeze before you're done, hope the cold doesn't kill you. So you don't bathe, not really. You wipe your face with a cloth once a week. You change your tunic every season, maybe? You don't remember. What's under your fingernails could probably be classified as a historical layer. Your scalp? Raw? Dry? Covered in what you hope is just dead skin and not a fungal colony. You comb with your fingers. The wooden comb snapped last winter. You still keep the half that remains. It's sentimental now. Your feet are a battlefield. Always damp. Always cold. Cracked heels. Dirt embedded so deep, you're not sure if it's grime or just how your skin looks now. One of your toes is darker than the others. You don't ask questions. You just limp and pray. Your hands, calloused, cracked, often bleeding. Your nails split. You bite them, but that only makes them jagged. You wash them in rainwater when it's available. Or beer. Or spit. It's fine. You don't eat with utensils anyway. You use fingers, or sometimes a knife, or sometimes just tilt the bowl and let gravity decide. Rain is both blessing and curse. It softens the soil. It cleans the air. But it also leaks through your roof, turns the floor into sludge, and soaks your tunic through to the bone. You've slept wet more often than dry. You no longer distinguish between warm and not freezing. Summer isn't better. In summer the heat turns your hut into a kiln. No air circulation, no windows to open. You sweat into your clothes. Your clothes hold the sweat dries. Then the process begins again. Your tunic has developed a personality. Musty, passive-aggressive, and extremely clingy. The insects arrive in droves. Flies, mostly. Then midges. Wasps, gnats. They bite, they land in your food, they hum while you try to sleep. One laid eggs in a goat's wound last summer. You try not to think about that. And the smell. Always the smell. You've grown nose blind to your own scent, but others, they hit you. Like when Maud comes by, the woman from 3 huts down who smells like boiled cabbage and feet. Or when the blacksmith walks past, radiating sweat and ash, and what you're fairly sure is burnt pig hair. Even the children smell, especially the children. A feral, muddy sweetness like spoiled milk and adventure. They rarely wear shoes, rarely wash. One of them is always crying. No one knows why. Inside your home, the air is thick with overlapping odours. Smoke, mostly. Then meat, if any was cooked recently. More often, it's just the scent of whatever root vegetable is currently rotting in the corner. The smell of your own sweat clings to the walls. You've lived in it so long, it feels like insulation. There's also a sourness in the air. Human. Not unclean exactly. Just real. Like your body is reminding you every second that it's still fighting to survive. Still breaking down food. Still pushing through with its medieval assignment. Don't die. Not yet. The hut is alive with sound. Not in a good way. In a crowded way. Someone coughs. Always. Someone's stomach growls. Always, sir. is the squeal of a piglet, the flutter of feathers, the sharp, unmistakable thud of someone dropping a clay pot. Again. At night, you hear mice. They scurry through the walls, sometimes over your feet. Once, one ran across your chest. You screamed, but only briefly. The rest of the room didn't stir. That's just Tuesday. When it rains, you hear it on the thatch. When the wind blows, it whistles through the cracks in the wall like a sad medieval flute. And when the fire dies, as it always does, the silence gets loud. Not peaceful, just empty. And yet somehow you get used to it. You stop noticing the smoke. You stop wincing at the cold. You stop reacting to the bugs. You just keep existing. Because to notice all of it every day would be unbearable. So your brain learns not to notice, to dull the edges, to filter out the suffering. Not because it goes away, but because your body knows it has to save energy for bigger battles. Hunger, sickness, fear. It's a kind of survival. Not strength, not resilience, just submission. You exist in a system of discomfort that never improves. You don't dream of comfort. You dream of neutral. A day without new pain. A night with fewer itches. A meal without splinters in the bread. You dream of a warm place, maybe. A fire that stays lit. A breeze that doesn't reek. Shoes that don't bleed. A wall that doesn't breathe mould. You wouldn't call it hope. You wouldn't call it anything. But somewhere, under the fleas, the filth, the fibres and the frostbite, you're still human. Just barely. Your animals live with you. Not near you. Not outside. Not in a pen. Inside. With you. All the time. The line between livestock and roommate is blurry. The pig has claimed a spot near the fire. The chickens wander freely, pecking at your crumbs, sometimes your toes. A goat once wandered in, knocked over a bucket, and decided to stay. No one asked it to. No one had the energy to remove it. This isn't unusual, this is normal, this is practical. Your animals are heat sources, noise machines, and emergency food reserves. You love them, but not sentimentally. You love them like you love your knife. It helps you survive, until it doesn't. Then it gets eaten. Sometimes they get sick. When they do, you keep them inside more, not less. To keep them warm. To stop the neighbours from stealing them. To make sure they die somewhere familiar, ideally not on your only blanket. You've wrapped a chicken in cloth before. Whispered encouragements. It still died. You think about the last cow your family owned. She was everything. Milk, strength, wealth. When she got ill, your father slept next to her. Tried to feed her broth from the same cup he drank from. When she died, he didn't speak for a day and a half. Then he buried her hoof, kept the bone. It's still on the shelf, next to the haunted soap. At night, the animals snore, or grunt, or whimper. The pig kicks in its sleep. The rooster sometimes forgets the time and screams at 2 a.m. The sound of rustling straw, shifting hooves, wet breath, it never stops. You used to think it was gross. Now it's just background. Because the alternative is worse. An empty hut. A fireless hearth. Silence. That's when you know something's gone wrong. That's when death is near. The hut, if it can be called that, is not clean. Not in the modern sense. You sweep, with a bundle of twigs lashed together. You shovel out droppings. You scrub the hearthstone occasionally with ash and water. But there is no soap. No disinfectant. Clean is relative. The corners are thick with cobwebs. Not by accident. Spiders eat flies. Flies carry disease. So spiders are your friends. You don't kill them. You greet them. You name them. That one's Marjorie. She lives above the fire beam and has 8 beautiful legs and a mean streak. The dishes are wooden. Sometimes clay. If they crack, you patch them with twine or wax. You rinse them in water that's already been used once. You dry them with the least dirty bit of cloth you can find. You don't think about it too much. Your family spoon, singular, has been used by 4 generations. The handle is worn smooth, the bowl of it darkened by use. It smells faintly of everything you've ever eaten. You're not sure if it's flavour or memory. Either way it works. The concept of trash doesn't exist. Nothing is waste. Bones are boiled again. And again. Then burned, then ground. Cloth is patched, repatched, eventually turned into rags, then wick material, then maybe used to clean a wound, then buried. Ash becomes cleaner. Urine becomes bleach. If it exists, it gets used. At least twice. You've never seen a broom made of bristles. You've never owned a bucket without a crack. You've never walked through your own doorway without stepping over a chicken or a sibling. You sleep close to the fire if you're lucky. On colder nights, the whole family clusters like fallen dominoes, stacked together for warmth. You've woken up nose to nose with your brother. Your father has a habit of muttering threats in his sleep. Your aunt hums, loudly. The pig snores. You've kicked it before. It kicked back. Sleep is not restful. It's something you fall into like a pit. Cold, itchy, crowded. Sometimes there's wind. Sometimes the roof drips onto your face. Sometimes you lie awake, counting the coughs, waiting to see if one of them turns wet. If someone will have to walk to the herb woman. If someone will have to dig. Dreams are rare, or at least remembered dreams are. Mostly you dream of food, of warm things, of silence, of clean hands and dry socks. You wake up tired. Always. Sleep doesn't restore. It pauses the suffering, briefly. And still, somehow, this is better than it could be. You're not sleeping in a ditch. You're not alone. You're not dead. These are the metrics that matter. This is what your body calls normal. A smoke-choked hut, the stench of damp straw and pig sweat, the wheezing breath of your family pressed against your skin, the sound of the wind creeping through holes you can't afford to fix. You haven't seen a mirror in months, maybe years. You know your face only by touch. Rough cheek, cracked lips, a nose that's been broken once. Your hands look older than your father's. You don't smile much. Your teeth hurt. All of them. All the time. You once heard a passing friar say this life is preparation for heaven. You didn't laugh. You didn't cry. You just nodded and went back to digging. Because this isn't hell. It's just life. And if you're lucky and very, very quiet, it will stay that way for another day. The workday begins. You won't win. That's not the point. The work starts before the sun's even made up its mind. You don't stretch, you unfold. Every joint resists. Your knees creak. Your back makes a sound like splitting kindling. You wonder briefly if today is the day something important snaps. But then your feet hit the dirt floor, and you're in motion. Again. There's no debate. No pondering your career options. You don't get to wake up and decide whether to follow your passion. You don't even get to wake up and decide not to. You move because you have to. You work because you exist. Your job? All of them. Whatever needs doing. Mostly it's the fields. You walk to them, past the well, the trough, the pig tracks in the mud. The sky is the colour of weak tea. The air is thick with the promise of rain. You carry your tools. A wooden spade, a hoe with one nail left in its blade, a length of rope that's probably older than you. The fields stretch just beyond the village, long strips of earth divided by dirt paths and overgrown hedgerows. You don't own your strip. You rent it, in a sense, from the Lord. But not with money. With labour. With chickens. With grain. With your ability to keep standing. The soil is tired. Like everything else. You start digging. Not furiously. Not efficiently. But with the slow, steady rhythm of someone who's done this every day for years. And will do it every day until they die. Probably in this field. The spade doesn't bite cleanly. The earth resists. It's hard, clumped, root-bound. It takes force. Your hands blister in the same spots every season. The calluses are permanent. So are the aches. You bend, dig, toss, bend, dig, toss. Hours pass. The sun climbs, pale and disinterested. Sweat gathers under your tunic. Your face stings. Dirt cakes your skin. Your eyes itch from the dust as you stop to drink from a flask. It's warm, slightly sour, technically ale, safer than water but not refreshing, just wet, just enough to keep going. You keep going. Sometimes there are weeds. You pull them. Sometimes there are stones. You throw them. Sometimes there are worms. You pocket them. Chickens like them. You've started to think like a chicken. You don't think about tomorrow, or next season. You think about what has to get done before the next bell. The midday bell is both a gift and a curse. It means food, but it also means you're only halfway through. Lunch is thin, bread hard, cheese harder, maybe an apple bruised and mealy. You eat sitting on a stone, or on your haunches, or standing, because bending again might lock your spine permanently. Your hands never feel clean. You eat with them anyway. You wipe them on your tunic, but that's already covered in soot, mud, and old pottage. You gave up caring around your third birthday. If you're lucky, you chew slowly. If not, you choke it down before heading off to the next task, hauling wood, fetching water, gathering animal dung for fuel, herding livestock, re-thatching the roof. All of it requires lifting, pulling, walking. Nothing is near. Everything is uphill, even when it's flat. Your body has become a tool, a dull one, reliable but not efficient. Your fingers are crooked, your shoulders slouch. You've forgotten what it feels like to rest and be rested. Sometimes you work for your family, sometimes for the manor. If it's for the manor, you're helping mend fences, or dig new ditches, or clear stones from the road so the Lord's horse doesn't trip and sue the village. Not that you know what suing is, but you understand consequences. Work on the Lord's land is required. It's called corvée labour, which sounds French and sophisticated, but it's just free work. Unpaid. Compulsory. If you refuse, you're fined. If you can't pay the fine, you're punished. You always show up. The steward watches. He wears shoes with actual soles. His hands are clean. He doesn't smile. He writes your name down in a book when you arrive, and again when you leave. You don't know what happens if he ever misses one. You don't want to find out. Some villagers work as tradespeople, blacksmiths, millers, coopers. You do not. You do everything else. You're a filler. You're a labourer, a peasant, a body to move things. There is no done. There is only enough for today. After lunch, your back hurts worse. That's the law of midday. It's not that it didn't hurt before. It's just that now you've remembered it's a part of you. It announces itself every time you twist, lift, reach, or breathe too deep. Your knees complain. Your shoulders whisper threats. But none of it matters. You keep working. Next chore. Gathering fuel. There's no forest near the village. Not anymore. It was chopped down generations ago to build huts and carts and warmth that's long since burned out. Now, fuel means one of three things. Twigs, dung, or luck. You walk the fields looking for dry grass, brush, and anything burnable. Sometimes you gather what livestock leaves behind. It's not glamorous. It's not clean. It's not even warm when it burns. But it's something. You scoop it into a basket. You try not to think about the texture. You definitely try not to think about the warmth still coming off it. You don't wear gloves. Those are for people who matter. You wipe your hands on the inside of your tunic and move on. If you're lucky, you find sticks in the hedgerow. Dry ones. Mostly not covered in beetles. You snap them with your boot heel, ignoring the little shock of pain that shoots up your ankle each time. Your feet have no padding left. The soles of your shoes are jokes. Water gets in. Cold stays in. Back home, you unload the bundle near the hearth. Your mother nods. That's her way of saying thanks. You don't need more. You just need to know you've done enough. Then, water. The village well is a short walk, which is worse somehow, because it means you're always doing it. Carrying water in wooden buckets that leak slightly, warp in the sun, freeze in the winter. You lift with your legs. You balance with your hips. You spill anyway. Each trip is 2 buckets, one on each side. Ropes over your shoulders, digging into your collarbones. The edge of the pail knocks your knees. The water sloshes and spits. By the time you get it home, a third of it is gone. You make 5 trips, maybe 6. You stop only when your arms refuse to bend anymore. Then, manure. The pigs live in their own filth. So do the cows. Someone has to shovel it. That someone is usually you. You use a flat piece of wood. You scrape it into piles. You dump it in the compost trench. You gag only once, maybe twice. Your reward? A chance to help in the garden. Digging trenches for beans. Uprooting weeds that fight back. Shooing crows. Pulling rocks. Rocks grow here. Every spring, the soil offers you new ones like a bitter gift. And then, repairs. The roof leaks. You climb up with your brother and a bundle of fresh thatch. You wedge it in, tie it down, pray it holds. It won't. The next storm will tear it free. You'll be back up here again. You always are. You climb down with splinters in your hands and hay in your hair. You don't complain. Complaining burns energy. Energy is rationed. You check the door next. The hinges are loose. You don't have nails, so you use twine. You don't have tools, so you use a rock. You don't have patience, but you hammer anyway. And finally, the animals. The chickens are idiots. The pig is belligerent. The goat is a criminal. You feed them all. You scatter grain from a frayed sack. Refill the trough with the water you carried. Slap the goat gently when it bites your sleeve. The pig knocks over the bucket. Again. You stare at it, it stares back. There is mutual hatred. But you also know one day you'll eat that pig. That will be a good day. You sweep the hut's floor, which means you move the dirt around into different piles and pretend you're making a difference. You aren't. but your mother appreciates the effort. At some point, your finger splits open on a shard of pottery, or a thorn, or maybe nothing at all. You don't stop. You wipe the blood on your tunic. You keep going. Later, if it swells, you'll wrap it in cloth and pray. That's the extent of your healthcare. Your stomach growls by mid-afternoon. Again. You try to ignore it. Food comes later. Maybe bread, if there's flour. Maybe stew, if someone snared a rabbit. Maybe just more pottage. Probably just more pottage. You long for meat. Not feast meat. Just a bit of fat. A bone with something to gnaw. You think about bacon the way some people think about love, with longing and resignation. Evening arrives slowly. The light softens. The shadows stretch. Your body aches, not sharply, just all over. A dull ache in every joint. You've stopped separating tired from alive. You finish your final task. Chopping kindling, maybe. Your hands are trembling. Your vision is blurry, but the pile grows. Just enough to last the night. Just enough to keep the fire alive. You nod to yourself. That's your big win today. You walk inside. The hut smells like onions. The pig grunts. Your sister is asleep on the floor. Someone's muttering in their sleep. The fire pops. You sit. You breathe. You made it through another day. Barely. Night is falling. You know because the light isn't golden anymore. It's grey. Soft. Fading. You also know because the church bell rings again. Slower this time. Less command. More reminder. You're still alive. For now. You don't wash up. There's nothing to wash with. Maybe a rag, if someone remembered to rinse it in the stream this morning. You wipe your face. Grime stays. It always stays. It's not dirt anymore. It's who you are. Dinner it's quiet. Most meals are. No one talks when they're eating. Talking uses air. And food is sacred. Bread again. Pottage again. Someone found a bit of leek today. A luxury. You taste it and for a moment your brain wakes up, almost shocked. Then it's gone. You share the bowl with your brother. He slurps. You elbow him. He elbows back. It's the closest thing to joy you'll experience this week. Your father takes the last chunk of bread. No one questions it. His hands shake when he holds it, not from emotion, from exhaustion. You notice, but you don't say anything. You wouldn't want anyone to notice when it's your turn to shake. There's no dessert, of course. There's never dessert. After eating, you tend the fire. You nudge the last good log onto the coals. You blow gently until they glow again. You watch the sparks lift, curl, vanish. It's the most beautiful thing you've seen all day. The animals settle. The pig snores. Chickens nest against the back wall. One of them occasionally lets out a confused squawk in its sleep. No one responds. Your mother's hands are red. The skin cracked at the knuckles. She's mending a tunic that's older than you. You ask if she needs help. She waves you off. Not unkindly. Just efficiently. You sit beside her anyway. Your sister is playing with a bit of string, making loops, whispering to herself. She's still small enough to imagine things. You envy that. Your aunt is already asleep, bundled in a heap of rags and wool, her head resting against the side of the hearth. Her mouth is open, her breathing shallow. She might live to spring, or not. It depends. You stare into the fire. Not because it's comforting, but because there's nowhere else to look. The room fills with a soft silence. Not peace, just fatigue. You wonder briefly, what it would be like to not do this again tomorrow, to not wake up sore, to not carry water, to not scrape dung, to not beg the soil for enough potatoes to avoid another funeral. You wonder what it's like to rest and actually feel rested. You wonder if there's a place where you don't go to bed afraid of cold, or famine, or hoof rot, or lords, or priests, or ghosts. You wonder if those stories about the South are true, where grapes grow fat on vines and people wear linen that isn't brown, where honey flows and meat is cooked over real fires, not just boiled into broth and despair. You wonder if they have pillows. You've never owned one. You've never touched one. You lower yourself to the floor. Carefully, everything cracks. Your tunic catches on a splinter in the wall. You ignore it. Your knees pop like a chorus of frogs. You settle into the same spot you always do. A groove in the straw that fits your body like a shallow grave. You lie flat. You exhale. Your back pulses with pain. Your shoulders throb. One eye doesn't close all the way anymore. The straw pokes your spine. Your feet are still damp, but you are warm. Barely. The fire still glows. The wind outside is faint. No one's yelling. No one's dying. No one's been accused of anything. It's as close to peace as you get. You close your eyes. You don't dream. You're not just poor. You're structurally unimportant. You were born at the bottom. Not just financially, existentially. You are a peasant, a villain, a serf, depending on who's doing the naming. The church calls you God's humble worker. The steward calls you boy, even though you're 22 and have a beard. Your family calls you useful when you're not sick. But mostly, you're called expendable. You do not own land. You do not own your labour. You do not own your time. You are more or less owned. You rent your strip of field from the local lord. Not with money, but with work. You owe him a portion of your harvest, a portion of your life, a portion of your obedience. If he says dig a ditch, you dig. If he says give a chicken, you hand it over. If he says nothing, you still have to guess what he wants and act accordingly. Because he can punish you. Not personally, he doesn't live here. But his bailiff does. A short man with sharp eyes and clean shoes, who carries a stick not because he needs to walk, but because sometimes he enjoys reminding people that he could hit them. The bailiff collects dues, enforces rules, keeps the books. He walks the village like it belongs to him. It doesn't, but you do, by proxy. If you miss your required labour days, you get fined. If you can't pay the fine, you lose grain. If you don't have grain, you lose your tools. Then your animals. Eventually your dignity. That one's easy. You don't have much left. The reeve is a villager. Technically one of your own, but elected to manage you on behalf of the Lord, which means you hate him more than the bailiff. At least the bailiff isn't pretending. The reeve smiles when he tells you to give up another sack of barley. He says things like, "We all must do our part," and "it's only fair." You thought about punching him once, but then he fined your brother for stealing firewood, which he wasn't. And suddenly your family didn't eat for 2 days. You've never seen the Lord. You've heard he lives in a manor 2 valleys over, with glass windows and a goose that doesn't get eaten. He drinks wine that doesn't come in buckets and wears linen without holes in it. You imagine him fat, content, clean. You've never hated someone you've never met so much. And above the Lord, the King, a man so far removed from your life, He may as well be a myth. You've seen his face on a coin once. Not recently. The baker's husband carried one. He stole it, probably. It had a crown on it. That was proof enough. The king makes laws, taxes, wars, none of which you understand, but all of which affect you directly. If the king declares war on France, you may lose your only ox to conscription. If he raises taxes, your lord raises your obligations. If he marries someone new, there might be a feast. Not for you, of course, but you might get to watch someone else eat a pie. The people closest to you in status are still somehow above you. The miller keeps a portion of your grain as payment, just for grinding it. You have no choice. You can't grind it yourself. He owns the mill. You bring your sack and wait while he flirts with someone else's wife, then hands back a smaller sack and tells you to be grateful. The blacksmith charges in chickens or eggs, sometimes favours. He's strong, so he gets away with it. Once, he beat a boy for not paying. The boy was you. You've avoided him since. Even the monk who visits your village looks down at you. He reads Latin, wears robes, eats meat. He has soft hands and a clean face. You knelt once to kiss the cross around his neck, and he recoiled like you were contagious. You are. Everyone is. The priest isn't much better. He preaches about humility, poverty, and sacrifice, while wearing better shoes than you've ever seen. His hut has a lock. His stew has flavour. He tells you to be grateful. You tell him amen. The humiliation is layered. It's not just what they take, it's how they speak to you while doing it. Like it's right. Like it's good. Like it's natural. You carry sacks of grain past a boy who's never worked a day in his life. He calls you filthy. He's wearing shoes you couldn't afford in 3 lifetimes. His teeth are straight. His cheeks are full. He points and laughs when you trip over your own shadow. You bow your head. You mutter an apology. Because anything else could get you whipped. Or worse, fined. You live in a world of rules. Unwritten ones. And they are all designed to remind you that you do not matter. You do not walk down the middle of the road if the reeve is coming the other way. You step aside, into the mud. You do not speak first when the bailiff enters the churchyard. You bow your head and wait to be noticed. You do not question why your family pays more than the widow next door. You just pay. If the bread is short, you take less. If the meat is bad, you chew anyway. If the priest accuses your cousin of heresy, you do not defend her. You lower your eyes and pretend not to know her. Because the system isn't broken, it's designed this way. Sometimes they punish people in public. Not for justice, for demonstration. You've seen it. Everyone has. The stocks are set up next to the church. A slab of rough wood with holes for hands and necks. People are locked in, left there for a day, sometimes 2. No shelter, no food, nothing to do but shiver and take it. Children throw mud. Adults spit. Some just watch, silently, pretending not to enjoy it. Once, your cousin was put in the stocks. For speaking back to the reeve. He said the grain count was wrong. That was it. 2 days in the cold. The second morning it rained. His hands went white. When they took him out, he didn't say another word for a week. Another time, a woman, a mother, was dragged out of her hut and tied to a post. Someone said she'd cursed their cow. The cow died, so it had to be her fault. The priest didn't hesitate. She was whipped, 10 lashes. Her son watched. So did yours. No one helped her. You didn't either. You couldn't. Because in this world, silence is survival. Obedience is armour. And shame? Shame is a form of control. Everyone's watching, always. You speak too boldly? You're prideful. You don't speak at all? You're suspicious? You laugh too loud? You're mad? You cry too often? Weak? So you learn to sit a certain way. Head down, mouth closed. You nod. You defer. You apologise even when you've done nothing wrong. You become so good at being invisible, you forget how to be anything else. Even in your own home, you know your rank. Your father speaks, you listen. Your older brother gets the better seat near the fire. Your younger siblings eat after you, unless there's not enough. Then they eat first, because your mother insists. If you're a daughter, it's different. You fetch water. Early, always. You rise before anyone. You sleep last. You patch clothes until your fingers bleed. And still you're told the stitching is uneven. You learn to make broth from bones, to turn mouldy flour into dough, to carry a child while stirring the pot, sweeping the floor, ducking under your uncle's voice. You're not expected to speak unless spoken to. You're not expected to leave unless someone marries you. You're expected to bleed quietly, birth quietly, suffer quietly. If you're lucky, your husband is only 10 years older. If you're unlucky, he smells like salted pork and thinks your silence is disobedience. No one asks if you're happy. That's not a word people use here. They ask if you're useful. And you always answer yes. Because being useless is the most dangerous position of all. The church reinforces the order. Of course it does. You are told to honour your place, that God loves the humble, that your suffering is a test, and that the meek will inherit the earth. You've wondered, how meek do you have to be before something good happens? Apparently more meek than you. The priest doesn't like questions, he likes donations. Chickens, eggs, labour. You tithe what you can, even if you can't. And in return, he warns you of hell. It sounds a lot like here, but with more fire. There is no one to complain to. No court, no system, no sympathy. The rich don't hear you, the church doesn't answer. The village listens, but only long enough to whisper your name later, behind a hand. Because reputation is everything, and rumour is faster than disease. Someone says your father once stole from the grain barn. People believe it. Your sister is caught talking to the smith's boy in the woods. People talk. Your mother misses Mass 2 Sundays in a row. Suddenly there are questions. You live under a ceiling made of watchful eyes. And the worst part, you help hold it up. You repeat what you hear. You point fingers too. Not because you enjoy it, but because if someone else is under scrutiny, it's not you. For one more day you can breathe. One more day you can walk through the village without someone hissing witch or thief or lazy. There is no solidarity at the bottom. Not really. Only proximity and shared dread. You envy the people above you. But more than that, you fear them. Because they can erase you. Not by killing you. That's too clean. Too quick. They can make you irrelevant. Untrustworthy. Unwelcome. That's how it works here. You don't need a jail when you have disgrace. You don't need a whip when you have shame. You've seen people leave the village, exiled, not officially, no announcements, just slowly frozen out. No one shares grain. No one lends tools. No one responds to greetings. Eventually they pack their things and go. No one asks where. No one follows. And then someone else moves into their hut, and the floor still creaks, and life goes on. You've felt that chill before. Not cold, but social. A glance that lingers too long. A whisper that stops when you enter. A moment when the room quiets just enough to make your stomach drop. It only takes one mistake. One bad season. One late tithe. One misunderstood comment. And suddenly, you're no longer one of us. You're a problem, and problems don't last long here. The thing about injustice here is that it's not shocking. It's expected. It doesn't come crashing down like a bolt of lightning. It seeps in. Quiet, constant, like smoke from a dying fire. You breathe it in every day. Eventually you forget you're suffocating. You don't dream of fairness. That word has no meaning. Fairness would require a system built to care. This one isn't. It's built to function. And you are one of the moving parts, replaceable, repairable only if valuable, spoilable like meat in the sun. And if you slip up, if you offend someone more powerful, or just someone more vocal, there are rituals to put you back in place. There's the shaming walk. You've seen it. A man caught poaching a rabbit he wasn't allowed to eat, stripped to his undertunic, and made to walk the full length of the village, holding the dead animal over his head, while children throw clods of earth and chant. He's not beaten. That's too kind. He's humiliated, and that sticks longer than bruises. There's public penance. A woman who raised her voice at a priest. He said she dishonoured the church. She was made to kneel in the nave for an entire Sunday, barefoot, on stone, with a sign hung around her neck. Pride. She wasn't fed. She wasn't spoken to, only looked at, and judged. Then there's the haircut, reserved for girls who act out. That's what the Reeve calls it. Usually it means being caught in the wrong place with the wrong boy. Her hair is cut short, unevenly, brutally, then smeared with ashes, a warning to others, a mark of shame that lasts until it grows back, until everyone forgets. But no one forgets. Not really. You live in a web of rituals designed to press you down just enough to keep you obedient, but not enough to kill you. You're needed, after all. Someone has to dig, carry, thresh, serve. You just have to do it quietly. Sometimes someone snaps. A boy runs off in the night, leaves his tools, his shoes, his family. They find him a week later in the woods, half-starved, shivering. He's brought back. No one says anything, but for the next month, he's watched. Closely. Every door he enters opens slower. Every conversation stops when he approaches. Eventually, he stops speaking altogether. That's safer. You understand it. You felt that urge to run, to climb the hills and just keep walking, but you never do, because you've also seen what happens to people without a village. Bandits, wolves, worse. There's safety here, not comfort, but safety. A shared misery. A cold kind of love. And so every time you're humiliated, passed over, shouted at, taxed again, accused of laziness while you're bleeding from the hands, you swallow it. You nod. You take it. Because the alternative is isolation. And that's a quieter death than most. You tell yourself the system makes sense. That it's just the way of things. That your suffering has meaning. That obedience brings peace. That there's an order to it all, even if you don't understand it. Because if it doesn't make sense, if it's just cruelty with a steeple and a fence, then you're trapped for nothing. And that's harder to bear than the bruises. So you work, you bow, you nod when spoken to. You thank those who command you. You watch others suffer and stay silent. You speak softly, stand back, step aside. And one day someone will do the same for you, and that will be called respect. Your body is owned by the Lord. Your mind is leased by the church. You believe in God, or at least you say you do, loudly, frequently, publicly. You don't have theology. You don't quote scripture. You've never read a word in your life. But you believe the things you've been told, and that's more than enough to shape your entire existence. Because belief isn't just spiritual, it's structural. It keeps the village together. It keeps the fields tilled. It keeps you compliant when nothing else makes sense. The church is the invisible Lord. The priest is its shepherd. And you are the sheep. Always the sheep. You go to Mass every Sunday. No one checks the schedule. You just know. Everyone knows. The bell rings before dawn, and you walk to the stone church in your best tunic, which is the same tunic you always wear, but this time it's brushed off and blessed with a little less mud. The church smells like wax and damp stone. It's cold even in summer. You sit on a bench if you're early. On the floor if you're not. You kneel when told. You stand when told. You mumble your responses in a language you don't understand. Latin, they say. Holy words for unholy people. The priest reads from a book you've never touched. His voice echoes off the walls like thunder made sleepy. He tells you about sin, about hell, about the narrow road that leads to salvation. He tells you to obey, to give, to repent. You do all three. The cross is everywhere. Carved into door lintels, burned into bread crusts, worn around necks on string, bone, or if someone is very lucky, silver. You don't own one, but you make the sign of the cross whenever someone sneezes, swears, or dies. You fear demons. You don't say their names. You fear witches, though you're not exactly sure what they do. Only that if too many of your chickens die, hiki, or if a neighbour's baby is born twisted, someone must have called a shadow from the woods. You fear the devil, of course. He's real. He walks the forests at night. Sometimes he takes the form of a black dog, or a man with backward feet, or your second cousin after too much mead. If you see him, you don't run. You pray, loudly. You also fear God, maybe more than you love him, because he sees everything, even what you think, especially what you think. You've been told that your soul is like a jar, and every impure thought is a drop of poison. Too many, and you're damned. And you're never quite sure how many drops are already in there. So you confess. Even things you're not sure were sins. Like stealing a glance at the Reeves' daughter. Or taking a bit of extra bread when no one was looking. Or imagining what it would feel like to push the miller into the stream. The priest listens, nods, gives penance. Maybe a prayer. Maybe a fast. Maybe you help him sweep the chapel. Maybe you kneel in the dirt while he recites scripture over your head and sprinkles water like you're a dying plant. You never argue. You thank him, because the priest is your connection to heaven. Without him, you are alone. Without him, the dirt is just dirt, not sacred. And death is just death, not transition. You are told that to doubt is to sin, that to question is to rebel, that even to wonder why some people starve and others feast is a whisper from the devil himself. So you don't wonder, not out loud. You tell yourself that suffering brings you closer to Christ, that Christ suffered first and more. You hear this in sermons. You repeat it when your knees hurt from kneeling too long, when you're freezing and barefoot and your mother is coughing again. You accept that your life is painful because God wants it that way. Or at least, that's what the priest says. And who are you to argue? He reads Latin. You don't read. He holds the bread of Christ. You just grow the wheat. He wears silk on feast days. You borrow wool from the dead. You don't envy him. You fear him. Because if he says you are unholy, you are. If he says you need to fast, you do. If he says you've sinned, you agree. Whether you remember doing it or not, the priest has power over your soul. More than your parents. More than the Lord. More than the king. Because the king can take your life, but the priest can condemn your eternity. And eternity matters here. Death is everywhere. It walks the fields with you, sleeps in your hut, waits at the door like a stray dog. You think about it every day. And so you cling to what you've been told, that there is more after this, that the pain ends, that heaven is warm and full of food, and no one coughs blood onto the floor. But only if you're good, so you try to be good. You cross yourself every time a crow flies overhead. Bad omen. You toss salt over your shoulder if you spill it. Not that you can afford to waste salt, but better safe than cursed. You knock on wood, even if the only wood near you is part of your roof, and you think it might collapse. You believe in saints, in relics, in bones and prayers and cloths soaked with holy sweat. You believe in magic, though you don't call it that. You call it faith. You bury iron nails at the corners of the field to keep demons away from the barley. You hang a dried wolf's tooth above the door to stop the pox. You whisper charms into your child's hair to protect them from the little ones. Not fairies exactly, but things that live in the hedgerows and hate to be seen. If a chicken lays a round egg, you burn it. That's a witch's sign. If someone dreams of fire 3 nights in a row, that's a warning. If a cat crosses the path behind you, you spit twice, then make the sign of the cross and walk backwards 5 steps. This is not superstition. This is survival. You've seen what happens when people ignore the signs. A baby born without a cry. A man struck dumb after killing a toad. A woman who danced alone in the moonlight and came back with her hair turned white and her mouth stitched shut by silence. The lines between sin, magic, luck, and divine punishment blur. You don't try to separate them, you just obey. Your morality is simple. Don't anger God. Don't anger the church. Don't anger your neighbours. If you follow those rules, maybe you'll be buried in sacred ground. Maybe someone will say a prayer for you. Maybe you'll make it to purgatory, which is like this life, but with better air. You don't confess because you feel guilty. You confess because it might stop bad things from happening. To your family, to your animals, to your barley. You confess preventatively. Like a farmer laying traps for mice. You fear invisible failure. Not the kind that brings shame. The kind that brings punishment without warning. A slipped prayer. A forgotten tithe. A sinful thought you didn't catch in time. So you're cautious with joy. You laugh, then you apologize. You celebrate, then you pray. You live, then you repent. Because joy is suspicious. Joy invites notice. And in this world, being noticed can be fatal. Your entire life is judged by people who claim to know what God thinks. And the terrifying part? You believe they might be right. When lightning strikes a barn, it's not just weather, it's wrath. When your child is born sickly, it's not bad luck, it's punishment. When the river floods the fields, it's not nature, it's a message. Everything is a message, you just don't know how to read them. So you listen to the priest, to the friar when he visits, to the woman with the herbs who speaks softly and never makes eye contact. She isn't called a witch. No one says it, but no one calls her to dinner either. You go to her only when you've tried everything else, when the fever won't break, or the rash keeps spreading. You leave payment on the step. You don't look her in the eyes. You don't say her name at church. And when the priest speaks about demons, you nod, because part of you thinks maybe she is one, and part of you thinks maybe she's the only reason your brother survived the winter. It's easier not to think too hard, because doubt is a slippery thing. It starts small, a question, a moment, then it spreads, and suddenly you're wondering, why are some people blessed while others rot? You once saw a child die while the priest held a relic over his body. A sliver of bone, he said, from a saint's hand. Everyone wept. The priest told them the child had passed into light. His mother didn't look convinced, but she nodded. What else could she do? There's no room for protest in a world where divine will explains everything. You're not allowed to feel cheated, only tested, not betrayed, corrected, not forgotten, refined. You've seen the statues, saints with open arms and bleeding eyes, Christ nailed to wood, staring down with that expression that says, I know it hurts, but you deserve it. You carry guilt in your chest like an heirloom, not always specific, not always earned, but heavy, ancient, inherited like your father's hands, your mother's voice, your uncle's cough. When someone in the village dies, and someone always does, there's a ritual, not just for mourning, for placement. The body is laid out, candles lit, words spoken, crosses drawn in ash on foreheads and doorposts. You don't weep too loud, that's pride, but you weep just enough to show you loved them, to show you're not cold, but not so much that people start to whisper, because they always whisper. If the person was old, it's seen as a mercy. If they were young, it's seen as a mystery. If they were sinful, everyone suddenly remembers their flaws more clearly than their name. You don't expect to live long. You don't expect to die peacefully. You do expect to be judged, both before and after. Burial is in consecrated ground, if you're lucky. If you confessed. If the priest approved. If the rain holds. If the gravedigger isn't drunk. If the ground isn't frozen. If you die unshriven, without last rites, they say your soul wanders. That's why some people bury extra coins in the pockets, bribes for the afterlife, or perhaps just insurance, in case purgatory has tolls. The church teaches you to fear your own body, to tame it, to beat it into submission if necessary. You've fasted more days than you can count, not just for lack of food, but because food can be temptation. Pleasure is dangerous. Smiling too long invites suspicion. Enjoying anything too much must be paid for later, usually in pain. You've learned to be suspicious of warmth, of ease, of comfort, because those things feel too close to sin. And sin is always watching. You know someone who wore red once and was told it was prideful? Someone else danced, not indecently, not wildly, just to spin at a wedding, and had to do public penance. You've seen people fall in love and be punished for it, because it wasn't arranged, because it wasn't convenient, because the person they loved had fewer pigs, or more cousins, or a reputation for sass. The rules are never written, but you know them by heart. And still, even through all this, you believe. Not because it always makes sense, but because the alternative is chaos. Because without the church, who explains why children die? Why your sister limps? Why the crops fail? Why the wind screams through the trees at night like something looking for you? You've heard that in other villages, heretics are burned. You've never seen it, but you've heard. Men tied to stakes, women with cloths stuffed in their mouths, priests weeping as they light the kindling. You believe in the fire. You believe in the fear. You believe in the silence that follows, because belief, in the end, is the only thing you can control. Not your hunger, not your labour, not your name, but your faith. That belongs to you. Or at least it feels like it does. On the good days. Sometimes belief looks like celebration. Feast days. The rare moments when the church lets you breathe. Just a little. When the priest smiles, the bells ring longer, and no one works. At least not openly. There are dozens of feast days. Saints you've never met. Stories you barely understand. But each one is a gift. A pause in the endless labour. You put on your least filthy clothes. You walk to the village green. There might be bread, a little ale, music even, a pipe or drum, someone humming something older than memory. Children run in circles. Women sit together and braid each other's hair. For a few hours you remember what it means to be more than tired. But even the joy is choreographed. You know what to say, when to bow, where to stand, when to kneel. You celebrate, but carefully. Not too loud, not too long. Not in a way that could be misread. Because at sunset, the priest always reminds you why you gathered. Not for pleasure, not for each other, but for God. The sermons always return, like gravity. He reminds you that saints suffered, that celebration is fleeting, that your role is not to rejoice in life, but to prepare for death. And you nod, you always nod, because even your joy isn't yours. You've been taught that comfort is a trap, that Satan lives in sweet things, that every laugh may need a fast to counterbalance it. And so you live quietly, even in your head. You've censored your own dreams, edited your own thoughts. When you catch yourself hoping for something simple, like an early spring or a day without pain, you add a prayer to cover the sin of expectation. Hope makes you weak. Hope makes you visible. And visible things can be judged. So you replace it with obedience. You build your life on rules. Rules that shift like wind and feel like walls. Rules you can't write, but feel in your bones. Rules that turn belief into habit. You cross yourself when you wake. You mumble a blessing over your food, even if it's rotting. You whisper apologies to saints for sins you don't remember. You sleep facing the crucifix, just in case you don't wake up. This is how belief becomes exhaustion. Not just mental, not just emotional, spiritual fatigue, and the slow draining of wonder from your soul. But you endure it because you must. Because maybe, just maybe, this suffering means something. Maybe there is a ledger being kept, and all this toil, silence, pain, obedience. Maybe it adds up to something beautiful someday. You cling to that possibility, even when you can't picture it, even when the priest's words blur together, even when the statues seem to frown at you harder each week. You believe, because without that belief, all you have left is the mud under your feet and the frost in your chest and the fact that no one is coming to save you, and that's too much to bear. So you hold your faith like a candle in the wind, shivering, flickering, weak, but not yet out. The world you live in is not only painful, it's deeply, offensively ridiculous. Let's talk about your health, briefly, because it's bad. You don't have a doctor. You don't even have someone who wants to be a doctor. You have a man who owns leeches and confidence. He's called a barber surgeon, which tells you everything you need to know. He'll cut your hair, pull your teeth, lance your boils, and pray while doing it. The prayer is for you, mostly because you're unlikely to survive the lancing. If your stomach aches, you're told it's caused by imbalanced humours. The solution? Bleeding. If your head hurts, that's melancholy in the brain. The cure? Bleeding. If your leg is broken, that's punishment from God. The remedy? Prayer. And maybe, you guessed it, a bit more bleeding. Leeches are popular. They're placed under your eyes, behind your ears, and in places you'd rather not discuss. They suck until you pass out or scream, whichever comes first. Then the healer nods solemnly and says something like, "Ah yes, the devil is leaving you." You're never sure if he means metaphorically or literally. Doesn't matter. You still have the fever. You've seen people survive infections. You've also seen people die from stepping on a nail. One woman coughed for 3 weeks and then dropped dead while baking bread. Another was bitten by a rat and developed a purple lump on her neck, the size of an egg. She tried to lance it herself. It burst. She didn't wake up the next morning. Then, of course, there's the plague. You've heard stories. Not legends, stories. Real ones. Your aunt remembers it sweeping through a neighbouring village like wind through a dry forest. Black boils, bleeding gums, vomiting, then silence. The priest called it divine punishment. Said it was for sins too terrible to name. You suspect it had more to do with the fact that people were living next to their own waste and eating soup stirred with unwashed spoons. But you don't say that. Not out loud. Because science doesn't exist yet. Only belief and boiling things until they stop smelling. And that's just medicine. Now let's talk about war. You're not a soldier, but you're still a target. Armies don't announce themselves. They arrive, they take, they burn. You've heard of the 100 Years' War. You don't know what it's about. Land? Power? The French being French? No one tells you. You only know that if men in matching colours come through your village with swords, you hide the chickens and pray. You've seen men marching with bows, spears, banners fluttering in the wind like they mean something. Most of them don't come back. If you're lucky, the soldiers don't kill you. They just requisition things. Your grain, your cow, your roof. If you're unlucky, or the goat didn't make it last time, neither did the miller's son. And when there's no war, there's still the threat of raiders, bandits, lords' sons playing at knighthood, or peasants who've decided they're done starving, and now you will instead. Justice is a dice roll. Laws are written by people who can afford parchment. Trials are rare. Punishments are creative. You've seen a man hanged for stealing a loaf of bread. You've also seen another man walk free after stabbing his brother, because the priest said it was a family matter. You once heard of a woman who survived drowning. They'd thrown her into the river to prove she wasn't a witch. She floated, which obviously confirmed she was a witch, so they burned her. The logic was airtight. You've seen a man walk backwards around a church 3 times to cure his limp. You've seen another bury a horse's skull beneath his doorstep to stop the voices. Neither of them are better now. You've heard people say that sleeping facing north will keep away the spirits, or that wearing garlic in your boot prevents disease, or that the 7th son of a 7th son can see through walls. You don't question these things. You don't have the energy. And honestly, some of it might be true, because the world doesn't just hurt, it laughs while hurting you. Your bread grows mould that glows in the dark. Your water is full of frogs and dreams. Your best pig runs straight into the river the day before slaughter. You bury it. You say a prayer. You move on. Because what else can you do? This is your world. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't apologize, it just is. And you keep living in it because there's no map, no exit, just more days, more absurdity, more waking up and trying again, even when it feels like a joke told in a language you don't speak. You've seen storms tear roofs off huts like they were paper. The wind screams in ways that sound almost human. Not words, not quite, but something close enough to make you lie still and clutch the cross around your neck and whisper apologies for every time you skipped morning prayer. You have seen lightning strike a tree in the centre of the village green and split it clean in two. That tree was older than your grandfather. It shaded the cattle. It marked where you buried the piglets one bad winter. Now it's gone. No warning, no reason. Just fire and splinters, and an old man nearby swearing he saw the Virgin Mary in the flames. No one believed him, but no one said he was wrong either. Just in case. Floods are worse. The stream looks peaceful. Most days, it's barely more than a trickle through the mud. But then the rains come, and the water rises like it's angry. You've seen it drag away fence posts, firewood, once, a dog. You tried to save it. It was already gone. Your neighbour lost half his tools to the flood. The next morning he waded in barefoot to find them. He stepped on something sharp. No one ever found out what. And by nightfall, his foot had turned purple. He died 2 days later. The flood took his tools and his life, in that order. Then there's fire. Not a roaring, romantic fire. Not half-light. Wildfire. House fire. Sudden fire. It doesn't take much. A knocked-over oil lamp. A spark from the oven. One strong breeze through a badly patched roof. You've seen huts vanish in hours. Nothing left but char and bones. There's no fire brigade, no pumps, no water pressure. Just buckets and screaming. The last time it happened, 4 huts went up before the rain saved the rest. 1 child didn't make it out. You never ask which. You just count differently now when you pass that family in the road. But nothing is more absurd or terrifying than birth. It happens in the hut. Always. On the floor. In the same space where you eat, sleep, bleed. There's no privacy. No sheets. No silence. The mother screams. For hours. Sometimes for a day or more. The sound is primal, animal. You've heard cows die quieter. Someone boils water. Someone else mops her forehead. The midwife barks orders. More cloth, more rags, a knife. Or you stay out of the way. Everyone stays out of the way. Sometimes it works. The baby comes, red and slippery and furious at existence. The mother cries, or laughs, or just collapses. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the baby doesn't cry. Sometimes the blood doesn't stop. Sometimes the midwife shakes her head and mutters a prayer. And you've helped dig too many graves that size. Death is part of the world here. Not dramatic. Not distant. Just around. You talk about it casually, not because you don't care. Don't. But because if you did care, all the time, your heart would rot from the inside. You once watched a friend fall from a ladder and break his spine. He screamed once, then didn't move again. The priest said it was God's mercy. You weren't so sure, but you nodded. You buried a girl your age last spring. Fever took her, or a spirit, or maybe just cold. Her name was Clara. She liked moss. You remember that? No one else does. You've seen infants buried before they had names. Elders buried before anyone noticed they were sick. Entire families vanish over a single winter. Pneumonia, starvation, bad luck. You've wondered why you're still here. You've wondered what's kept you alive. And that's when it really gets absurd. Because sometimes survival feels like a joke too. A man drinks stagnant ditch water and lives. A woman prays over mouldy cheese and recovers. A boy falls through the ice, vanishes for a full minute, and walks out smiling. Meanwhile, your cousin eats a bad mushroom and dies mid-sentence. Meanwhile, a girl your sister's age steps on a thorn and her foot rots off. Meanwhile, a man gets a nosebleed that won't stop. Ever. And everyone pretends that's normal until he collapses in church and never gets back up. There are no answers, no reasons, only stories. And stories are how you cope. You say it was a curse. You say it was fate. You say it was meant to be. But deep down, part of you knows it was just chance. And that's worse, because chance can't be bargained with. It can't be prayed to. It doesn't care how many candles you lit or how many fasts you endured. Chance is chaotic, and it runs this world more than any king. And so you do what everyone does. You make rituals. You follow rules. You behave, because it feels like control. Even when it isn't. Even when you've watched good people die and bad people grow old, and kind people rot young, and mean people live forever. Even when the world is clearly unfair, you keep pretending it isn't. Because the alternative is waking up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, staring at the straw above your face and realizing there's no reason, there's no order, there's just mud, blood, and luck. And that's too much truth for anyone to sleep through. Eventually, something in you goes quiet. It's not peace. It's not acceptance. It's just less noise. You stop reacting to things the way you used to. When someone dies, you still care, but the tears don't come right away. You nod. You help dig. You eat the bread at the wake and say the prayers. And that's enough. When someone gets sick, you hope they recover, but you also start thinking about who will take their place in the field, or whether their boots will fit you. You laugh at things you shouldn't. A man slips on pig dung and breaks his wrist. You chuckle because it was funny, because he made a noise like a startled goose. Because if you didn't laugh, you'd have to feel it too much. Black humour becomes your only rebellion. A way to take back some part of yourself. To say, yes, this life is ridiculous. And I see it. I see the absurdity. I'm not numb, not completely. You whisper jokes during Mass. You give your favourite chicken a noble name. You sing rude songs about the reeve when the wind's too loud for anyone to hear. It's not resistance. It's survival. Because the world will crush you if you don't find ways to laugh while it's happening. You've seen people break. Not from one tragedy, but from everything. A man who stops speaking after his third child dies. A woman who stands in a road long after the cart has passed, like she's still trying to cross. A boy who hums the same tune every day for 3 years. Then one day stops. No one knows why. He won't say. You feel yourself drifting sometimes, mentally. Like part of you is watching from outside. Like your body is here, digging turnips. But your mind is 2 feet off the ground, staring at the sky, wondering if clouds are edible. You catch yourself doing things automatically. The sign of the cross, a whispered prayer, a repetition of some old saying your grandmother muttered. Even though you're not sure what it means, you cling to these patterns. They're anchors. They keep you from floating away completely. And so you keep waking up. You keep putting on your boots. You keep feeding the pig. You keep existing. Not because it makes sense. Not because it's fair. But because it's what comes next. And in this world, what comes next is the only plan anyone has. You find comfort in the simplest things. A warm bowl of broth, a dry night, a joke that actually lands, a dream where your feet don't hurt and your teeth don't fall out, and the pottage tastes like something that might have once known flavour. You don't need miracles, you just need the bleeding to stop. Literally, figuratively, spiritually. And sometimes it does. Just for a little while. The stars come out, the wind dies down, the fire crackles in the hearth like it means it. And for one small, quiet moment, you think, maybe I'll make it through tomorrow too. You've made it to the end of the day. And the end of yourself. It's night again. Of course it is. Time passes, whether you notice or not. You lie on your back, staring at the familiar nothing above you. Beams, dust, dark corners that shift if you look too long. You know every crack in the roof now. Every nail, every line of rot. You could draw this ceiling from memory. It's the only view you've had for most of your life. Your body is still. Not from peace, from emptiness. Everything hurts, but gently, like an echo of a bruise. Your legs twitch once, then settle. You feel the cool weight of the blanket. It smells like smoke and damp wool. Your skin sticks to the straw underneath. You listen to your family breathing, one by one. All the rhythms you know by heart. Your mother's shallow breaths, your father's sighs, the soft wheeze from your brother's bent nose. Someone coughs. You wait, it fades. Even the pig is asleep. You hear it, huffing softly in the corner like an old man with a full stomach. You close your eyes, then open them again. Sleep isn't something that comes easy anymore. It used to. When you were young, sleep arrived like a blessing, a quiet fog that pulled you under. Now it's harder. Now you lie still for hours and think. Not about the future. There isn't one. Not about the past. You've made peace with most of that. Just the middle, the now. The slow, dull ache of being alive in a world that doesn't care if you are. You wonder what it would be like to wake up somewhere warm, with a full belly, with soft sheets, with no one expecting anything from you. You try to imagine a life where you didn't have to carry, lift, bow, kneel, bite your tongue, keep your voice low, hide your fear, keep count of your sins. But even in your imagination, it doesn't last. The roof still leaks. The bell still rings. The world is still waiting outside your door, holding a list of demands and no explanation. You've started to forget what it's like to feel excited about anything. Food doesn't thrill you. You eat because you must. Sunlight doesn't stir you. It just means the fields are dry enough to work. Even music, what little there is, feels like someone trying to shout over a storm. But you keep going, because that's what you do. You rise, you move, you serve, you survive. And in moments like this, when it's quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, you let yourself wonder why. Not because you want to quit, but because you want to know. Is there more than this? Not heaven. You're not talking about heaven. Heaven is later. Heaven is promised. Heaven is the after. But what about now? What about you right here, lying in the dark with straw in your hair and a belly full of old bread? Are you allowed to want something more? You turn your head slightly and look at your sister. She's dreaming. Her mouth is twitching. Her hands clutch the blanket like she's holding something precious. Maybe she's dreaming of fields without rocks, or cakes with honey, or a day when no one raises their voice. You hope it's something nice. You shift your feet, slowly, carefully. The ache in your knees wakes up for a moment, then goes back to sleep. You think about everything that could happen tomorrow. The sow could go missing. The firewood might be soaked. The well might run dry. The priest might say your name during the sermon and mean it. The bell might ring early, or not at all. You know these things. You know what chaos looks like. But right now, it's quiet. And in that quiet, something strange creeps in. Not joy, not peace, just breath. Your lungs fill, your chest rises. You exhale, and you realise this breath right now is yours. No one owns it. No one demanded it. No one taxed it. No one prayed over it. It is just yours. And for a second, that's enough. You close your eyes again. And this time, you don't open them right away. You remember things sometimes, not clearly, not like a story, more like feelings, shapes, a sound without a name. You remember standing in a field, barefoot, when the grass was high and the sun hit the back of your neck just right. You were maybe 10, maybe younger. You weren't working, just standing, just breathing. The breeze moved the grass like water, and for a second you thought the earth was alive. You've never felt that again. Not quite. You remember your mother laughing once, a real laugh, not the brittle kind she gives now when she's tired and pretending not to be. She was holding something, maybe a fish, maybe a baby, and your father said something crude, and she laughed so hard she dropped it. The moment passed. No one mentioned it again, but you carry it like a secret flame in your chest. You remember a girl. Her name was Edlyn. She had too many teeth and a face like a bucket of milk, and you loved her anyway. She said hello to you once, and you thought about it for a month. You still think about it. You remember lying on the hill just outside the village and looking up at the stars, trying to count them. You didn't get far, but you swore in that moment they were watching you back. Now, when you look up, All you see is thatch. Now, you count your debts instead. But still, these memories float up, here and there, when your body is too tired to fight them. They rise through the silence like smoke. You let them. Because remembering is the only way to feel like something else once existed. You think about all the things you'll never do. You'll never write your name. You'll never own a book. You'll never see a city. You'll never taste sugar. You'll never ride a horse. You'll never sleep in a bed that wasn't first someone else's. You'll never paint, or swim, or learn to whistle with 2 fingers. You'll never leave a mark behind, not one that lasts. You think about the version of you who might have done those things. A version born somewhere else, somewhere softer. You envy that person, but you don't hate the one you are. You've survived. Every storm, every harvest, every winter. Every time someone told you, this is the way things are, and you nodded, even if it broke something inside you. You've kept going. That counts for something. Not in the eyes of kings, not in the eyes of priests, but maybe, just maybe, in the eyes of the earth. The dirt that's held you, the wind that's carried your breath, the stars that never blinked, even when you forgot how to look up. You shift slightly. Your arm's asleep. So is your foot. You adjust your blanket. Pull it tighter around your neck. It smells like wood smoke and mutton fat and thyme. It's heavy. It's itchy. It's yours. Outside, the wind moves softly. Not cold. Not loud. Just present. You hear it push against the hut, like it's asking to be let in. You don't answer. Somewhere across the village, a dog barks once. Then silence again. That's good. Dogs bark when something's wrong. You close your eyes. Not because you're ready, but because there's nothing left to look at. Your breath slows. Your hands are still. Your bones ache in their usual places, but no new complaints. That's a win. You don't think of heaven. Not right now. You don't think of tomorrow. Not yet. You think of the well. The rope in your hand. The way it groans as the bucket comes up. The way your muscles strain and your back knots and your palms burn. But then you remember that sound. The sound of the water just before it reaches the surface. A slosh. A ripple. A promise that something is there. You hold on to that. You're almost asleep now. Not drifting. Not dreaming. Just suspended. Your thoughts come slower. Like they've learned to whisper. Like they know they're not the important part anymore. You think about the fire. The last ember. Still glowing. You think about whether it will go out before dawn. You decide it doesn't matter. Someone will stoke it again in the morning. Or they won't. And you'll wake cold. Or you won't. And the fire will burn anyway. The world doesn't hinge on your breath. It never did. And that's strangely comforting. Because if nothing depends on you, you don't have to hold it all together. You can just be. Like the moss. Like the chickens. Like the wind that moves through the trees, whether anyone's watching or not. Your muscles begin to forget they exist. Your fingers uncurl. Your jaw loosens. Even your heartbeat feels tired. Not in a dangerous way, just in a done-for-now way. You hear a creak, the roof shifting, the walls sighing like they've been holding something in all day. You understand that feeling. The night presses gently against the edges of your mind. You don't resist it. Because what's waiting on the other side isn't a bright light or a great reward. It's just quiet. And that's enough. You hear your name, maybe. Or maybe it's the wind again. Or a dream you haven't entered yet. It doesn't matter. You're sinking, not drowning. Just sinking. Through the straw. Through the floor. Through the earth. Becoming part of it. Finally resting inside the only place that has never asked anything of you. You think one last thought. It's not a prayer, not a wish. Just a simple, tired statement. I'm still here. And then, nothing. Not sleep. Not peace. Just the end of the sentence. The room is still now. No one speaks. No one moves. Not even the fire. The dark has settled into every corner. The air is heavy. The straw crackles once, then falls silent. Outside, the wind keeps wandering. Inside, there's only breath. Faint. Fewer, further apart. And just like that, you disappear.